our current study, which will help us characterize how gestures made by kids differ in different contexts, and specifically in this case, both seeing of visual feedback, presence of visual feedback, or absence of visual feedback while they're entering their gestures. And then we expect to use the results of this study to develop algorithms better suited to this type of specific context. So basically, if we can model the shapes children will make better, then we can automatically recognize them better. So the research questions for this specific study are, number one, how does the presence or absence of visual feedback affect how children and adults, because we include them too, input touch gestures on mobile devices? And number two, if any differences exist, do they affect software recognition of these gestures at all? So this was a lab study where the kids came in. They used very simple apps that asked for samples of gesture input from them on mobile devices, like smartphones is what we used actually. And we had 41 total participants. We had kids that aged and ranged from 10 to 17. And what we did for analysis was group them into age groups. So specifically, we normally group from about 5 to 7, 8 to 10, 11 to 13, and 14 to 17. And these are kind of based in part on Piaget's developmental cycles, school age groupings for school progression in the United States, and just our previous experience with working with kids. So when we're analyzing data, we're looking at kids of these age groups sort of clustered together. So in the gesture task, what kids saw was just a blank screen that prompted them to enter each of these 20 gestures one at a time. They gave us 6 examples of each of the gestures. And what we did was we collected all of the little touch points that were generated as they dragged their finger across the screen to make those gestures. And so that's 120 samples, but we did that twice for each kid, once with visual feedback showing and once without. And it was randomized which order they did those conditions in. So, to results. First, we examined the properties of the actual gestures or shapes that children drew. So here's an example from a gesture from a child drawn without feedback, a triangle, in case you couldn't tell. We computed 9 geometric properties of these gestures, which are based on features that modern recognizers use to differentiate between gestures when they're doing the classification process. So I'm not going to go into detail on all of these features and how we computed them in the talk, but they are specified in the paper and how they're computed and where they come from. But for this talk, I'm going to focus on 2 features: gesture length and gesture duration as case studies. So gesture length is down there on the bottom right, and basically this is just the cumulative sum of the distance between the